other group B vitamins. This is again as per the study done by NNMD in 2012. And a major chunk of the food produced in India is either wasted or gets expired or rotten, costing millions of rupees every year. So with a country of 1.35 billion people, we have a situation where there is a burden of unsafe food, unhealthy diets, and which is also affecting the environment very severely. Again, if we look at unhealthy diets, around 50% of the children which are under the age of 5 are anemic. Around 50% of the women who are of reproductive age are anemic. Out of 1 in every 4 men is having hypertension, 1 in every 5 women, and around 50% of all deaths are due to non-communicable diseases. And if you see the overall economic burden of vitamin and mineral deficiencies, it's close to around $10 billion. So with a situation like this, a dire need was felt, and it was understood that this is kind of a silent epidemic which is prevailing, and there could not be any better time to begin something at a massive scale to address this. And again, if we look at the mandate of FSSAI or even under the preamble, FSSAI is expected to ensure safe, wholesome, and of course, hygienic, healthy, and nutritious diet for all the citizens of India, with a focus on consumer connect and attempting to have social and behavioral change. Apart from its core regulatory function, the concept of this a massive nationwide movement called Eat Right India was thought out, which will kind of address these gaps, and which will kind of maintain the hygiene and healthy and sustainable practices across the food supply chain, from crop to processing to distribution to retail to even preparation in the households. So with all these things, the vision of Eat Right India was crafted, which was to ensure safe and nourishing food produced in environmentally sustainable systems for everyone. And these eat safe, eat healthy, and eat sustainable became the 3 pillars for Eat Right India movement. So under Eat Safe, the focus was on personal and surrounding hygiene, and in the entire food value chain, combating adulteration, eliminating toxic residues in food, preventing hazards of repeated frying or used cooking oil. Under Eat Healthy, the focus was on the diets which are not only for the palate but for the body and mind, and the food which is good for both people and the planet. So here the focus was on balanced diet, diet diversification, eliminating industrial trans fats, reducing salt, sugar, and saturated fats, and a focus on fortified staples as well to overcome the micronutrient deficiencies. Under under sustainability, the focus was on eating local and seasonal, reducing the food waste, reducing and recycling the plastic waste, the single-use plastics and the food packaging, conserving water in the food processing, and attempting to reduce chemicals in the entire food chain. This Eat Right India movement also very closely aligns with another nationwide movement such as Swachh Bharat Abhiyan and Poshan Abhiyan and Jal Shakti Abhiyan. Now, once the vision was crafted and the broad objectives were clear, then the question came on the approach. Obviously, food is something which cannot be responsibility of a single organization or an entity or a person. Safe food is actually a shared responsibility. There are a lot of parallel ministries involved. There are many stakeholders across the supply chain involved. So it was felt that there is a need to develop something called as food systems approach, which will kind of bring in all these stakeholders under the Eat Right umbrella. So what was done was this approach was divided into two major headings. The whole of government approach, where all the government institutions and parallel ministries were involved, and then the whole of society approach, where people from entire society were called up to join hands in this mission. So under the whole of government approach, what we did was we got into interministerial engagement. We involved Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Food Processing and Distribution. We reached out to state food safety departments and up to the level of cities and district by launching challenges and activities such as Eat Right Challenge for cities and district, Eat Smart Cities Challenge for the smart cities in India, like that. And for the whole of society approach, we reached out to professionals who are working in food and nutrition, where we formed a chapter called NetProFan, which is now active in, I think, active in all states, I think, and at least in all state capitals, with more than 100 plus activities being done. We reached out to industry and consumer associations, and also to development agencies and to our training and auditing partners. And then we crafted, I think, kind of key action points out of that, which included few demand side initiatives, few supply side initiatives, and few sustainability side initiatives. So under the demand side initiative, what we actually did was, as I mentioned in the beginning, there are two major sectors in food operating in India. One is the organized sector, which automatically comes under the purview of food licensing, and there is one large unorganized sectors, which includes street food vendors or petty vendors. So what we decided was to somehow bring them under the umbrella of training. So at least the awareness level will come up. So, and second is to somehow find out what are the source points of this food distribution, or people who are operating under this business in the entire society, and kind of bring them under some kind of benchmarking or certification scheme, and then we link them together. So we had training, food safety training at the base, and then benchmarking and certification, and then enabling consumers to have healthy food choices, and then social and behavioral change things in the third thing. So what we did was we came up with kind of certifications for street food hubs. We came with certifications for school, which is called Eat Right School. We came up with certification for campuses, certifications for individual restaurants and food outlets and catering establishments, and certifications for places of worships as well, called as Bhog, and certifications for wherever the food is being served. And we, what we did was, we laid out a common standard operating procedure, where it starts with kind of a pre-audit, where a few gaps are, analyzed, infrastructure improvements are understood, then do that amend that gaps, do the infrastructure improvement, and get them into the training, do a final audit, and give them a certification. One important thing to notice: these certifications are purely voluntarily. So we motivate people, we encourage them to go for these certifications through our various outreach activities, which we plan under social and behavioral change. Then, under sustainability initiatives, we focused on reducing the use of plastics in food packaging and carrying or storage, and instead promoting eco-friendly initiatives, eco-friendly alternatives. Then we focused on reducing the used cooking oil, thus eliminating the total polar compounds from the food chain, and then using it as a raw material for converting it into biodiesel or whatever, by selling it as a raw material to soap manufacturers. And third is to combat the food wastage issue. We launched a program called Save Food, Share Food. So this initiative creates awareness on minimizing food wastages, So we created a network of food sharing alliances, food distribution agencies who kind of pick up surplus food from one place and deliver it to the needy ones. There is already a website and a dedicated helpline already working for this. And under the social and behavioral change, what we did was we came up with very simple and basic messages, like reducing salt, sugar, and oil, from your daily diet. Eating healthy, eating nutritious, eating local, eating the food which is kind of closer to us, and minimizing trans fat out of your diets, and I would say, uh, yeah, and kind of eating the balanced diet. And we reach out to the masses through through our social media platforms, like we have an FSSAI or in the state FDS, or through community radios, FMs, or over YouTube, and in our outreach activities also, such as Eat Right Walkathon and Mela, which we have planned as a part of this Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav to celebrate 75 years of India's independence. So this movement is going on, and I wish the movement reaches out to the masses, to the last mile, to the last person, and it becomes an instrument of change in improving the food habits and the food ecosystem of India. So this is it on Eat Right India from my side, and I hand it over back to you, Sanjay.
Thank you, Vishwas. It was amazing presentation from your side, and my apologies. I called Eat Well instead of calling it Eat Right India. So, but because I did the mistake, so now everybody knows that it is called Eat Right India.
No problem.
So I request everybody to kindly go and check this website. It's an amazing organization, and we will work very closely with Eat Right India to make sure that all of us eat the right kind of food. So now, very excited to welcome from Physician Alliance, Physician Association for Nutrition from Germany, my friend, Mr. Niklas Oppenrieder. He is wealth of information. He's a doctor, but now not practicing because he is busy training other doctors all over the world, in the US, in Canada, in Europe, everywhere, that how we can help people to solve their problem without giving them medicines, just by prescribing the right kind of food. So we are very happy to have you here, Niklas, and look forward to hear you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, good morning. I'm Niklas Oppenrieder. I'm a medical doctor and the co-founder of the Physicians Association for Nutrition. Thanks for having me here. I'm especially excited as we are currently establishing PAN in India, and there is just so much for us to learn. So I totally appreciate this form of exchange and networking, and looking much forward to further exchange. So we are an international NGO on a mission to eliminate diet-related deaths globally. And we aim to do that by making nutrition a core part of healthcare, so medical training, medical practice, healthcare systems, and by engaging health professionals in efforts towards more healthy and more sustainable food environments, basically using their power and standing to change the food system. And we do that while looking at the links between our food choices, the respective food systems, and our health in a very comprehensive way. So today I want to talk about the broader health reasons and the urgency to shift towards more plant-based diets, to really share my opinion or share my perspective that reimagining nutrition only can happen through plant-based diets. As medical doctors, our main motivation is to reduce, minimize, or at best eliminate suffering, right? And when looking for the most effective way to do so, or very effective ways, I think a lot of the answer is to be found in a quote from Dr. Christiaan Barnard, who's a South African heart surgeon who performed the first heart transplantation in history in 1967, together with his team. And he said at a much later stage of his career, he said, "I have saved the lives of 150 people from heart transplantations. If I had focused on preventive medicine earlier, I would have saved 150 million. So we all know that nutrition is a key aspect, a key element of preventive medicine. And I would even argue that we can well just exchange nutrition for preventive medicine here, and this would still be a correct statement. Why is that the case? Because when we look at the data of the Global Burden of Disease study, which is the world's largest project on risk factors for disease and premature death, we see dietary risks on rank number 4 of the most important risk factors for premature death in India. It's number 2 globally. And that alone seems quite important already. But as we know, I can't show you the slide, unfortunately, for technical difficulties. But let me tell you that among the top 10, we got as well high blood pressure, number 1, high glucose levels, high body mass index, high LDL cholesterol, and so on. And we do know, and the authors state as well, that these are all linked to our diet as well. And the authors say exactly, because of the strong relationships between these risks, the true driver of this cluster, like this huge cluster of risk factors driving chronic disease and premature death, the true driver is likely diet, the risk in high body mass index, or both. So here we are, one of the most important factors on a global scale, as I said, ranked even higher than in India itself, to prevent one of the world's biggest health threat, chronic disease, to prevent premature death, and to reduce our astronomical healthcare costs, is our food. And what are dietary risks, by the way? So we can look into the same data and then see for India that the number 1 dietary risk is low whole grains. Then there's low fruit, low vegetables, low legumes, low nuts and seeds, low fiber, too much salt, which is mainly consumed through processed foods, too much processed meats. So basically, if we look at the list of dietary risks, this shows us kind of a pattern of solution. And this is a plant-centered, plant-based diet, at best none or minimally processed. So this is already a great reason to shift to more plant-based diets. But with the recommendation of a general pattern, we definitely want to tackle more health crises, like the climate crisis. The WHO General Director, Dr. Ghebreyesus, stated that the Paris Agreement is potentially the strongest health agreement of this century. Why did he say that? Well, we all experienced, and the people in India in particular this year, we all experienced the heat waves. Sorry, could you, is that a question? Or would you just mute?
We muted them.
Thanks. Okay, so yeah, experienced the heat waves. The US and Europe are experiencing heat waves right now. We experience other weather extremes, like who cause physical consequences, like death and disability, and as well, what is often underestimated, massive psychological consequences. So we see sharp rises in suicides and mental illnesses in post-disaster areas. We have new vectors bringing new diseases to certain geographies. We have rising waterborne diseases. We have, kind of to close the circle, a shortage of water and food supply through these weather extremes. We have rising sea levels. We have regions where it will just be too hot to live, basically leading to environmental refugees, forced migration, civil conflicts, and all the very grim consequences. So at the climate crisis, at its heart, is a health crisis. And the question is, what has the pattern, a food pattern that I just mentioned, to do with that? Well, we know that more than a quarter of global emissions are caused by our food systems, and more than half of that is due to the production of animal products. And we know that the more plant-based our diets are, the more we reduce the emissions directly. So from the food we eat, that's very clear connection. The more plant-based, the less emissions. And what is important as well, the more plant-based our diets become, the more land frees up we can use to sequester carbon. Basically saying we free up land, we grow trees, we reduce CO2 emissions. So this is the second crisis, the second health crisis we tackle with our food. The third is one just at hand, it's pandemic risk, right? We all know that the COVID pandemic very, very likely won't be the last global zoonotic pandemic we experience in our lifetime. And we do know that there are a couple of factors, of course, as always, that drive zoonotic diseases and pandemics. And the two main ones are land use change and agricultural industry changes. And we've just talked about land use change by saying that we would free up land by turning towards plant-based diets, which helps us with our emissions, but which helps us as well in maintaining intact ecosystems. So land use change is the main driver of pandemic risk, and the main driver of land use change is, again, animal agriculture. 50% of our habitable land is used for agriculture worldwide, and almost 80% of that part is used for the production of animal foods. And that's why the UN Environment Programme has put intensified agriculture and animal agriculture in the center of their work and graphic around factors that are increasing zoonosis emergence. So this is at the center. Another reason is climate change. We just talked about that. Another reason is deforestation and other land use changes. We just talked about it. And another driver of pandemics is one crisis that I will mention as the fourth, basically, that we want to mitigate with food change, and that is antimicrobial resistance. I don't know if how many of you have heard of it. Antimicrobial resistance was called a slow motion tsunami by Dr. Margaret Chan, the former director of the WHO. And antimicrobial resistance basically means that bacteria which cause infections develop the ability to stop an antibiotic from working against them. This means that infections caused by them can't be treated successfully anymore. And in the worst case scenario, where most pathogenic bacteria are resistant to most antibiotics, and we're closer to that than many people think, and that which would bring us back to basically a pre-antibiotic era, right, where people die from infections we consider totally harmless today. And in addition to that, antibiotic resistance is fundamentally threatening modern medicine, because many of our interventions, like a lot of operational procedures, a lot of chemotherapy and others, are dependent on successfully working antibiotics and don't make sense if we haven't this insurance, basically. And the linkage to food is, again, there are two main ways of how antibiotic is created. One is our healthcare system itself. All health professionals know that about the need for proper use of antibiotics. The second biggest way is animal agriculture. And this becomes more and more problematic if we look at the numbers and see that 70% of antibiotics worldwide are used in animals and not in human medicine. So when we're talking about reimagining nutrition through plant-based diets, we are actually thinking of mitigating the world's biggest health crises. That's chronic disease, the climate crisis, pandemic risk, and antimicrobial resistance. So there is the need, there is an urgency. And before I finish, let me get back to one topic that was raised already before, because while all the health crises I've mentioned might well be mitigated by a more plant-based diet, we need to weigh in yet another health crisis, especially in India, and that is malnutrition. So it's if we look at the risk factors driving most death and disability combined, malnutrition is the leading factor in India. So when we are reimagining nutrition through plant-based diets, we know that we need to do it. We know that we need to do that fast, and we all need to make sure to provide nutritious plant-based options. And I'm very excited and very much looking forward to the exchange with all the stakeholders to discuss the optimal solutions for that. Thank you very much.
Amazing, as expected, Niklas. You really nailed it, and I'm getting a lot of messages directly on my WhatsApp that they are really loving it, and they wanted you to go on and on. And but because of lack of time, probably we'll have to do a separate one for the PAN, where we could get all the four panelists from PAN only, and we get in maybe about 100 or 1,000 doctors in the room, so that we make it an exciting conversation. So we are definitely going to do that very soon, Niklas, and we will also get you physically to India and have those interactions. So I hope PAN in India will be launched very, very soon. So now
Thank you very much.
Welcome, welcome. So I now would like to go to a personal friend, Nikhil Behl, who is a CEO of food and fashion business of Images Group. As you may be knowing, Images Group is the numero uno organization in India when it comes to food retail or the retail in general. So they are a massive, massive dominant player, not only in India, but also in the whole of Middle East. And they publish a fantastic magazine, which is called Progressive Grocer, which is the best magazine not only in India but also in the best part of the world. And they are representing Progressive Grocer in India, and they churn out amazing stuff. And we all learn from that. And not only that, since last 15 years, they have an amazing congregation of India's marquee event. May I say, it is the Anuga or the Sial of India, which is the most prestigious event in India, Food Forum India, which happens in Powai every year. The amazing hotel there, the West Inn, which was called Renaissance earlier, and you represent that, Nikhil. Can you please tell us that how, when we get together in December, we bring in the focus on the plant-based foods, because you are our go-to guy if we have to make space in the shelf in the retailers, and we ask them that please don't charge 50,000 rupees for the listing fee for every new product which comes on your way from the plant-based foods, which are basically run by the small organization. And what has been your take? So we would like to know, you are a nutritionist here, yourself, and you have been qualified. So you are the right person with whom we should have this conversation. That are you personally convinced that plant-based diets are amazing? And are you personally going to support us when we get together in Mumbai in December 7th and 8th of December? Over to you, Nikhil.
Thank you so much, Sanjay ji. It's a pleasure to be here in the midst of such an august gathering of people driven by the objective of helping others with improving their food choices. I'm going to break down your question into two halves. I'll take you through a brief background about myself and my exposure to nutrition. And then I will also talk about how we can assist food-based, plant-based foods at the event in December. So, I have dabbled in the nutrition space. I ran and co-founded a nutrition and wellness tech company, which curated programs for addressing chronic ailments, personalized programs addressing chronic ailments. And that's when I actually got a deep insight into nutrition and the impact that gut health has in all our lives, right? So I'm sure people are aware of the gut-brain axis, right? Which is the gut and brain are actually connected by the vagus nerve, and they're constantly communicating, right? So you might have experienced, butterflies in your stomach when you see a loved one, when probably meeting a loved one after a very long time. If you just before a big project or a big presentation, you feel anxious and you want to visit the washroom, right? If you're constipated, your energy levels drop. Why is that happening? It's because of that gut and brain axis, which is why the gut is also called the second brain, right? And therefore, it's very important that the gut stay healthy. A lot of our thinking, a lot of our decisions are actually based on the gut, right? Which is why the phrase came out, gut feel. And several people, have also big investors, in fact, right, have made tons of money based and just leveraging on this thing called gut feel. So the gut is extremely important, right? Now, I'm not going to get into the technicalities of the gut, but let's understand that the gut is made up of several million microbiota, right? It's an ecosystem there, an extremely diverse ecosystem that resides in your gut, and that needs to stay healthy. So nutrition is what drives that, right? And that's what was the basis of the venture that I led. It was more around helping people transition the mindset of treatment to one of prevention, and that's what Nicholas has also been speaking about, that prevention, focusing more on prevention than actually trying to address a problem when it's happened. Now, well, Doctor, I mean, I don't know if you all are familiar with this personality, but I'm a big fan of his. That's Dr. Dean Ornish, right? The clinical professor of medicine from the University of California and president of Preventive Medicine Research Institute. He's done a lot of controlled, studies around the impact of nutrition on diseases, and he's actually come to, has published papers around how uh, chronic diseases and in fact even aging can be reversed through the right nutrition. Right, that's the impact that nutrition has in our lives. And some people actually go to the extent, and I'm one of them, that food is medicine. So everything is based on food. Your health and your mental well-being, etc. All is driven to a great extent through what you eat. Now, plant-based foods play an important role in the maintenance of a diverse and beneficial ecosystem of bacteria in the gut, right? Subsequently, positively impacting health. And that's how plant-based foods can actually play a key role in ensuring gut health, right? And there's enough of studies out there to point in that direction. New and improved foods that lead to improved health outcomes is a massive opportunity. Sorry, yeah, thanks. And that's a massive opportunity, and plant-based foods, I think it's time that plant-based foods occupy a seat at the helm. If you look at some of the key emerging trends around food, and we've been tracking that very closely, 5 key emerging trends point to immunity building and nutrition. Right, this is in the food space, right? Immunity building and nutrition is like number 1. Convenience, super ingredients, sustainable packaging, and innovative byproducts. And these are what's going to define the future of food going forward, right? So immunity building and nutrition is right on top on everyone's checklist, and that is something that plant-based foods can really move around that proposition. Now, the food and grocery sector in India. So I'm not going to get into the facts and figures because I think Vishwas and Nicholas have explained to the group in detail on the silent epidemic and how grave the situation is, right, around chronic ailments and NCDs in India. India is the diabetes capital of the world, and several other chronic ailments. It's just on the rise. And the biggest problem, right, is that the age group is not anymore the really old or the aged population. It's actually between the age group of 29 and 56. So that's the concern out here, the big concern, which is the younger population is also falling prey to chronic diseases much earlier than 50 years ago. In fact, 50 years ago, India didn't have these kind of chronic ailments. It's happened because of a change in lifestyle, and therefore these chronic ailments are also addressed as lifestyle diseases. So if you can better your lifestyle through proper nutrition and of course the other aspects, there's a lot of positive that can come out of it. Now, the food and grocery sector. So now I'm going to get into some numbers around the opportunity here, right? So the food and grocery sector in India is approximately $500-600 million, right? And it is a significant part of the retail story in India, which is one of the driving forces of India. Modern retail within that, while small at the moment, is the fastest growing consumer access format. So it's something that cannot be ignored, and it would be foolhardy to ignore access to modern retail, and that's where we come in, right? So the Images Group is a leading retail intelligence outfit, and we are Asia, South Asia's, and Middle East's largest retail intelligence organization, and we've built several assets around that. We run forums, which are basically conference-driven exhibitions. We have our B2B magazines. We have online properties and research reports. So we cover all aspects of intelligence that will help a potential company spread its footprint in within that sector, or even explore new opportunities. And we've been doing these events now for a very long time. In fact, the one that I would like to speak to you all, and Sanjay ji also addressing how we can add value to the plant-based food companies, is the India Food Forum, which is happening in December this year in Mumbai. India Food Forum, this will be the 15th edition of the Food Forum. So it's a very well-established event. We get the entire food value chain participating in the event, specifically the food retail companies, and all the large modern retail formats, the large food companies all come and participate and visit the event. So it's a must attend for companies that are looking to make a mark for themselves, food companies looking to make a mark for themselves in this space. And we strongly believe that plant-based foods is is a massive opportunity. It's in the interest that people gain access to it. So I'm here to join forces with the Plant-Based Food Industry Association and lead their endeavor in not lead, but Sanjay ji will lead it. But I will help support their endeavor in taking this out to the market.
Okay, thank you, Nikhil. It was very, very heartfelt campaign for plant-based foods, and I'm really amazed the credentials that you possess in this sector. And we are definitely going to work together to make this a big, big, big movement. And I'm fully aware of the power of Food Forum India. So over to Mr. Prakarshi Pulkit. But before I get in Prakarshi from Plantmade, Prakarshi had a previous partner, Kavya Dashura, who is a scientist and academician in IIT Delhi, a great incubator and a resource person. Kavya, can you please tell us about your partnership with Plantmade and what you think about the subject? And very, very briefly, so that we bring in Prakash immediately after that.
Sure. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for giving me this forum to share my views. Actually, it was with Mr. Rahul Diwan, who's the in charge of, or maybe owner of Plantmade, and the word Plantmade itself was conceived in my lab. Prakarshi had just emailed me over LinkedIn, and that is how we connected. And then through the common discussion, we decided that he should be joining Mr. Diwan because of his culinary skills. So from there, and the R&D for Plantmade egg was done at my laboratory, and it was funded entirely by Mr. Rahul Diwan, which is the Plantmade in charge, or the owner. So they were of a very extreme positive bent of mind that the animal rearing should be stopped because it is environmental damage in the long run. So something plant made and something plant food, and that too something which can be just poured over the pan and cooked. So we went continuously experimenting, selecting, scrutinizing the raw material. And then Prakarshi was, since he joined, he was very well present in the lab. So he also got aware with the R&D which we were doing. So I would say that the entire team, Mr. Diwan, Mr. Pulkit, myself, and my team, we all worked this out together. And I am eternally grateful to Mr. Diwan for conceptualizing the thing and trusting IIT for doing the R&D. But my lessons learned from the work which we done, and I am very sure these are the collective lessons learned, which we collectively would like to share with all the aspirants. First and foremost, that there has to be a scientific basis of any new product development, because one of the experience I'll just share, one enthusiast who wanted to make peanut based milk was not even aware that peanut might have aflatoxins. So we made a quick sensor for them to detect in the raw material which they are getting. So that is why I very much insist on R&D before you actually launch a product. Then all the ingredients, which, and we discussed it yesterday also, most of them are imported and most of them are very new. They come into the category of novel food categories, even in the EU norms. So we don't know how do they actually act with the lesser utilized crops or conventional crops or legumes. We just add them to get a specific texture. So please don't do that. There has to be a proper texture of what physiological product it turns out into, and how does it affect the metabolism of an individual, at least the human cells. It should be worked on. And a shelf life assessment necessarily needs to be done, because plant-made plant origin products are very likely to get fermented if they do not have a proper shelf life. Then pre and post cooking nutritional evaluation should be done. Otherwise, we sell a product with a particular nutritional label, but when we cook it, the proteins get denatured, the polysaccharide get converted into oligo and monosaccharides, and the product is no more the same what the consumer has paid for. And also the product, the whole process should not be energy intensive or nutrient intensive. Sometimes we heat a product during the processing time that the nutrients, they almost die down, and what we are selling is just for the namesake. It's kind of a false labeling. So this is like a collective lesson learned throughout the process when we were working with Mr. Diwan and his team, including Prakarshi. And after that also, because my lab actually works on the detection of heavy metals in the grains and also in the products. So, and we develop sensors for quick detection, antimicrobial resistance. So these are the things which any new product developer has to make sure, because we are trying to put plant-made products as the frontline game changer in the nutritional well. So the proper R&D needs to be done. So Mr. Sethi, I would be like, just that would be all. I'm very thankful to you for providing me this platform. And again, I would convey my thanks to Mr. Diwan and Prakarshi also for taking it to this level. Thank you so much.
Prakarshi, you got a great introduction. So we all now want to hear from you. You're on the mute.
Namaste. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Professor Kavya. You've always been an inspiration. And I think the reason that I am in Plantmade is you. You were. So I'm really grateful for that. So I have a quick presentation about today's topic. I'm just going to quickly share my screen and we'll get started. I hope everyone can see my screen now.
No.
How about now?
Not now.
1 second. Can you see my screen now?
But only some color. Yes, now yes. No, yes.
Sorry about that. All right, wonderful. So this is basically what we do at Plantmade. We take some vegetables, we kind of do some witchcraft and wizardry, and then we make it into alternatives that look, taste like meat, eggs, and we try and give you similar nutrition through those foods.
I love it.
So we're basically trying to work on solutions to provide better nutrition to the country. That was the objective with which we started the company. We realized that most of our country eats a very carbohydrate-rich meal. That's why the rice is, or the roti is, the hero of our meal, and the sabji or the dal is very little. We just dip it. So we definitely realized that there is an existing need for mass nutrition, and we realized that we could do that by leveraging existing alternatives and by looking at new sources of proteins like solar protein, mushroom, seaweed, and even maybe eventually to cellular food. Now, after this, we basically we looked into the past and said, how can we do this with minimal processing? And this was a classic example where a very popular chef served a meal to the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister was vegetarian, and he had actually made a fish using bottle gourd, a chicken using jackfruit, and a shami kebab using lotus stem. So this was a classic example where you don't really need a lot of processing, but maybe a lot of culinary innovation and a lot of inspiration to build something that really tasted good and gave you the right nutrition. Now, a lot of people are very against processed foods. I understand there is a huge skepticism, but there is a huge amount of food waste, and I think the only way to prevent that food waste is to process that food and preserve it and use it in some other way. Now, typically, people have been fortifying food and using newer and trying to use increased fortification in general foods of protein by adding fiber, adding nutrition, and adding vitamins to it, and that's not really worked as much as it should have, right? The technologies that plant-based companies are looking at today are shear cell-based meat, algal and seaweed culture, scaffolding, protein extraction, etc. But these are the ones that are going to be taking the new age forward on designing new foods that basically kind of give you more variety and take you away from traditional boring food formats. India has a lot of national dishes, and we could all sit and argue if biryani is the national dish, or vada pav, or khichdi, or butter chicken. But the idea is that we have a lot of opportunity for diversification, and by using a lot of grains, legumes, and a lot of different formats, and hiding the flaws of plant-based foods with spices. So I think that prevents a huge opportunity for moving away from monoculture and trying to incorporate a lot of different varieties of food in your diet. Now, this is the Indian acceptance of plant-based meat is pretty high. That's what we've seen from a few different studies, and that's a clear indication that if the taste is right, then people are going to be more and more willing to accept and try newer foods that will be basically disguised nutritious food for them. The three major trends that I think everyone talks about today is that health and indulgence, and healthy indulgence are okay, but never at the cost of taste, right? We all are slaves of our tongue, and we all want good tasting food. I mean, just because it's healthy, it can't taste bad. Gone are the days where you have a bad tasting milkshake. Local taste in global formats, that's what I think everyone wants today. That's one of the most emerging trends. And health, wellness, sustainability, and consumer trust. Building that is at the core of building any kind of food brand in India today. So that's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Prakarshi. Very impressive. And please send me this presentation. I loved it.
Thank you.
So now, Chris. So Chris, you are a veteran and you are very unassuming. You try to deglamorize your existence by saying that you guys know more than me. But I exactly know, Chris, that you are a veteran who has spent so many years in such wonderful organization like REIT, and now bringing the whole world to New York on 8th and 9th of September, and the International Plant-Based Food Working Group is there to back you, where I'm one of the founding directors from India, and Plant-Based Food Association, the great organization run by Rachel and Nicole in the US, is behind you and supporting you. And we look forward to a delegation which is supported by APIDA, which is supported by Plant-Based Foods Industry Association, and hopefully you will give us a great welcome in New York. Over to you, Chris. You are on the mute.
Okay, how's that?
That is perfect.
Okay, thank you for that.
But by the way, what's the time, Chris, right now in the US?
Right now it is 1:35 a.m.
Okay. So you are not alone. My daughter is also watching this show from Canada.
From Canada. Okay, well, I'm going to deserve a good night's sleep after this. But no, I really appreciate that nice introduction, as well as your invitation to be here and to address this wonderful audience. I said before, I'm not, quite as smart as the others because I'm not in the medical field. I'm not in the healthcare field. And, I look at myself as a trade show organizer, and, it's funny, but it's an important role. And what we're trying to do here at the at Plant-Based World Expo is that we're trying to bring buyers and sellers together. What we're trying to do is increase distribution of plant-based food products through our trade shows and our affiliation and our partnership with the PBFA. And so my name is Chris Nemchek, and I'm the general manager of the Plant-Based World Expo. Plant-Based World is the first and only U.S. B2B trade show that is solely dedicated to the advancement of the plant-based movement. So there are many food shows in the U.S., and I've worked for some of the biggest and best ones in my many years of trade show organizing. I've worked for the fancy food shows, and so but the fancy food shows are great, beautiful, wonderful shows, but they're very broad in their focus. What we did was take plant-based, one category in the specialty food show or the fancy food show or the natural products expo, one category, and make it its own show. And so everyone who comes to our show is there for the advancement of the plant-based food movement. So we launched our show in 2019. Our second edition was not until 2021. It was postponed because of COVID, and our third edition is coming up in just a couple of months, in September 8th and 9th in New York City, and it's expected to include over 350 plant-based food producers as exhibitors. We will also be proud to boast that there will be about 4,000 members of the buying community, including retailers, distributors, and food service buyers attending our show. And our partner in producing this event is the PBFA, and the Plant-Based World Expo is billed as the official trade show of the PBFA. So Sanjay mentioned that partnership that we have, and it's really important to mention that because while we are the business end of the partnership, the PBFA is our cause base. They're our conscience in this whole thing. And so it's a great partnership, and we have a wonderful mission together. And I'd like to just quickly read it for you. It's that Plant-Based World connects and empowers businesses within the global supply network to successfully develop, source, and distribute plant-based products. So simply stated, but that's what our mission is. A few highlights of our show. Basically, it is a big streamlined product discovery experience. So there's so many new products coming on board seemingly every week, coming to market. And at Plant-Based World, buyers can meet with 300 plus plant-based suppliers under one roof in the heart of New York City. Every buyer that comes to the show is looking to source plant-based products and plant-based products only. That's the difference between us and any other food show in the US. Also at the show, you can expand your knowledge. We have running alongside our show is a very comprehensive conference program covering 3 tracks. And that program is designed to draw new and interesting members of the buying community from retail and food service channels. And you can also meet buyers one-on-one. We have a program called PBW Connect. It's a matchmaking program, and it happens the day before our show. And they are a series of pre-arranged 15-minute meetings. And if you're a producer of specialty foods and you're an exhibitor in our show, you can meet face-to-face with Whole Foods, Kroger, UNFI, and many others before the show even starts. So we're matching them up one-on-one with companies like that. And then there's also several networking opportunities in and around the show and in the evenings during the show where you can catch up with colleagues and meet new colleagues. This year, as Sanjay had alluded to, we are organizing a delegation coming from India to our show. We do have some internationals at our show. We have Italy, we have France, we have Brazil, the Netherlands, Germany, but we don't have India. But this year we are going to invite, and we are already working on this program where we'll have organize a visit of about 5 to 6 plant-based food producers, investors, influencers to come and visit our show and see our show and see what the opportunities are there. We're going to invite them to speak on a panel and tell their stories to our audience. And we're going to invite them to hear our stories as well from so many new companies just getting started in the US in this movement that is exploding right now. We're going to take these folks on a practical tour of manufacturing facilities and retail outlets in New York City neighborhoods where the plant-based movement is really exploding. And next year, the goal is to, in 2023, the goal would be to bring a pavilion of Indian plant-based food producers to our show to join those countries I've already talked about. And the time is now to start bringing Indian plant-based companies to New York as well. Some of my colleagues today talked about some of the products that are displayed at the shows that are, more processed, right? And, as we know, plant-based products are generally healthier than animal-based products, but we know that there is sentiment and evidence that some of our products on display are highly processed and not entirely healthy. But we talk also about good taste, right? And I love when Mr. Pulkit said we are a slave to our tongues, because in America that is more true here, I think, than anywhere. But I just wanted to respond a little bit to that sentiment by telling you a little bit about my own personal journey with the plant-based lifestyle. And when I started with Plant-Based World in 2018, I was not a vegan. I was not a vegetarian. I had worked for many food shows, but I didn't know much about the benefits of a plant-based diet. And I am a type 2 diabetic. And I was in need putting a program together that was going to help me gain more control of this disease. So when I took this role, when I took this role as general manager, I started traveling around trying to find out a lot more about plant-based foods. And I went to a lot of conferences, and I went to one called the Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference in San Francisco. And while I was there, I met some of the foremost plant-based health professionals. And you may recognize the names of Dr. Michael Greger and Dr. Michael Clapper. And those are two gentlemen that I actually had lunch with while I was there. And you know, I was really engaged with them, and they taught me a lot about what a plant-based diet can do for me in my type 2 diabetes. There's no question that these leading health professionals knew all about the processed foods issue, but still they all agreed that less animal products in your diet is healthier and better for you. And I learned that eating less and even no animal products could help me treat and fight off my chronic disease like diabetes, even if some of them were processed foods. I decided on the spot at that conference in San Francisco that I would go plant-based. And I was a meat eater one day and a vegan the next. And I needed products to help me transition. It's not easy to change 55 years of behavior overnight. So for me, and for many Americans that are on a similar journey, meat alternatives are generally used as a transitionary product to help with the transition from a meat diet to a plant-based diet, to get us through certain situations like a business dinner where plant-based options might not be available at the particular restaurant, or, you know, to help me at a party with friends that are cooking and you know, having meat products. You know, I can bring alternative proteins with me and put them on the grill as well. So they're products that help me get through this transition that I'm this journey that I'm on. But you know, the good news is I believe the trends in the US are more toward a whole food plant-based diet after our initial infatuation with the meat alternatives and so forth. I still think there's a role for these products, but my personal journey, and I think many Americans, is leaning more towards a whole food plant-based diet. And on top of it, you know, there's other reasons why people live this plant-based lifestyle and join this community. It's because there's other reasons, like the ethical treatment of animals that people believe in, and also environmental sustainability that we've been talking a lot about today. So I wanted to share my own personal journey because, you know, it's really interesting to be someone that helps buyers and sellers create more business through plant-based foods, but to be that person and also be living it on a day-to-day basis, living that message is really important to me. So I was really pleased to be asked to be here today to bring the message of plant-based world and the excitement and the energy that we bring, and hopefully that we're going to have a closer connection when we have that pavilion of Indian plant-based food producers at our show in 2023. Thank you again, Sanjay. I'm really pleased to be here.
Thank you, Chris. I know you have also signed up to be our volunteer for Plant-Based Foods Industry Association, and very grateful for that. And also, when I was looking around the faces in the room, I think about 60-70 faces in the room out of the 90 who signed up during the day, and now after about 1 hour, we have still about 60-70 people left here. And when you said that we are slaves to our tongue, I looked at that, you know, the chefs were smiling, and they were very happy to see that. But then I also looked at the nutritionists. None of them are smiling. They were not happy listening to that statement of yours, because they always tell us how to be more you know, disciplined. So that takes me to the star speaker of today's morning, and Lalit Kapoor. We deliberately kept our best dish in the end. Uh, and you have 10 to 15 minutes, Lalit, because Medha wants to make a closing note, and she wants to make sure that some people are still left in the room. So because we promised that we'll get over by 11:30, and we are at 11:18. That takes you 12 minutes. Plus, you also have we started about 3 minutes late, so you have 15 minutes. Full 15 minutes to you, Lalit. You are on the mute. You're on the mute. Lalit, you're on the mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear.
Okay, okay. So I live in San Francisco Bay Area, and I meet these people quite regularly. There's a Dr. John Mcdougall here. He is retired only recently, but he conducts 10-day programs and also intensive study weekend programs where he calls other experts such as Dr. Dean Ornish or Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, Dr. Colin Campbell, and many others. 10 years ago, I watched a documentary, Forks Over Knives, and it resonated with me. And I decided to, I was 63 at the time, and I decided to make changes. And I was suffering from diabetes and hypertension, hypothyroid, gout, osteoarthritis, and seasonal allergies. And when I changed my diet, these all went away one by one. BP came to normal, and thyroid came to normal, gout problem went away, and diabetes went away. And I just developed passion for it. Nothing succeeds like success. When you're succeeding, you want to learn more. Unfortunately, I had been retired. I retired in 2005 after selling my second company. So I had all the time in the world. And I started meeting some of these doctors in these conferences at Santa Rosa. And I have learned from them. And then I started to share that in a WhatsApp group with my IIT Kanpur batchmates. And then one thing led to another, and more people, their wives came up and said, how come we don't get to hear? And then they brought friends. So the result is that I've gone through 250 social groups, and about 52,000 people have gone through the program. And they all are curing their diabetes and cholesterol problems and hypertension, and they're all getting off medications. I run a 2-month program. It's all free. I take people on WhatsApp, Facebook, and Telegram, and Signal, the 4 social groups. And I take them systematically through 9 weeks of or 2 months of education, and including my post, my analysis, and videos by people such as Dr. Dean Ornish or Michael Greger and others. And we know it very well now that all chronic diseases are caused by diet and lifestyle. So when you change your diet and lifestyle, the diseases go away. It's as simple as that. It's very simple. I think where we are a little bit apart is that just being plant-based is not enough, because many people don't realize, but the mortality data shows that non-vegetarians die at the same rate with same life expectancy as vegetarians. And vegetarians die at the same life expectancy as vegans. So just because you have become vegan does not mean that your life expectancy has gone up. I mean, eating potato chips and drinking Coke is a vegan, So the problems that vegans face, I mean, let's only talk about them. The problem that plant-based food eaters face is really simple. Sugar and oil is refined food. Is refined food that kills you. Because the refined food digest and absorb first goes to your liver. And that's where it metabolizes. And if you are consuming sugar or oil, your liver is going to be passing it on as triglycerides into your blood. And your blood triglyceride levels go up. And instead of storing it under your skin in a subcutaneous layer, it gets spilled over. The first place it gets spilled over is your liver. That causes fatty liver. Now, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is as common now as the alcoholic fatty liver disease. I mean, 25, 30 years ago, only alcoholics used to develop cirrhosis of the liver. Now, vegetarians are developing cirrhosis of the liver. I lost a very close personal friend of mine, vegetarian throughout his 63 years of life. And he died at the age of 63 because of cirrhosis of the liver. And he loved drinking lemonade and Coca-Cola. As simple as that, okay? So the thing to understand is that we need to really focus on, just because you are plant-based doesn't mean you're healthy. We have to get rid of oil and sugar. Now, getting rid of oil is not as difficult as it may appear, because instead of having peanut oil, you can have peanut paste, or what we call peanut butter. Peanut butter is whole. Peanut oil is not whole. Similarly, cashew butter, or walnut butter, or almond butter, or soya butter, or even coconut butter. All those butters are whole foods, but their oils are not. So simple thing that we need to change, and I want this to get across the processing food industry. They need to start using paste or butter of these nuts and seeds instead of using their oil. As simple as that, okay? Don't use peanut oil, just use peanut butter. And on the other side, on the sugar, you replace that with dates or date syrup. Date is a fruit. There's a date sugar available at Amazon, which is nothing but pulverized fruit. So when you eat date sugar, there's no restriction. And or you use other dried fruits like raisins. So many things we make at home by blending partially soaked raisins. They bring the sweetness. Or you use sugar cane and make sugar cane juice and use that to sweeten. Or figs or other fruits. Now, there's a big need out there. There was a documentary made in 2004. It was called Super Size Me. And this producer decided to eat all his 90 meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, for 1 month at McDonald's. And by the time, and he had a complete checkup, physical checkup. By the time he reached day number 23, 24, the doctors were pleading him to break the project and don't finish it. So you are going to die before the project finishes. He had developed liver problem and kidney problem and all kinds of problems. And then a thought crossed my mind. What about if we do the reverse of that? We create a restaurant, and this is addressed to you, Prakarshi, that if we can create a restaurant where we tell people, if you eat all your 90 meals here, we will cure your diabetes, we'll cure your cholesterol problem, your heart disease, and everything. It's doable. We are doing it. I have started doing 5-day retreats. I just finished a retreat outside Bombay at Bandardhara. And we served people food, and they couldn't believe it. The food had no sugar and no oil. And it happens to me all the time. When these people were participating in my courses, when they come visit me and I give them a glass of juice, they say, is this the green juice you talk about all the time? I say, yes. I say, gee, I love it. I can have it every day. How come it never comes out the way when I make it? And then when I serve them lunch, they said, is this what you talk about in your group? I say, yes. The thing to understand is that we need people, expert chefs like Prakarshi, And we need expert chefs like him in every part of India. I mean, of course, every part of the world. I mean, we would like them to be in Italy and France and other places. I'm right now focusing heavily on India and US. And I like to see, and in my NGO's charter is to bring a Prakarshi for Maharashtrian cuisine, one for Gujarati cuisine, one for Kannada cuisine, one for Tamil, one for Telugu, one for Punjabi, one for Bengali, and then demonstrate to people. I mean, that the food can be very tasty, much tastier than cooked in canola oil or peanut oil. Okay, because all you have to do is saute your onions in water and then add cashew butter into it and fry your regular spices in cashew butter and onions. It's very easy. So that's what I do. I take people through a 2-month program, and by the time the program ends, many people are off their medications, all medications. Okay, of course, the most common are BP, blood sugar, diabetes, and cholesterol, statin drugs. I mean, they are easy to monitor because you can monitor them at home often or just get a test done. When it comes to things like COPD, they also see the change. And the beauty is that you begin to see the change in one day. In one day, people who are suffering from angina, who cannot walk 25 meters, by the end of day one, next morning, they say, gee, I walked 40 meters today. End of second day, they say, gee, I finished 80 meters. By the time the first week ends, they are finishing 200 meters. This was the story of Dr. Michael Grieger's grandmother. Michael Grieger's grandmother was told to prepare for her death because she had had already bypass surgeries. And Michael Grieger was an 8-year boy at that time. And then she decided to go under treatment of a plant-based doctor in a clinic in Los Angeles. Okay. And she cured and lived another 30 years. And that's why Michael Grieger has dedicated his life. He has a non-profit organization where he reads every English language journal on diet and nutrition and makes 4 or 5-minute videos to get it across to people what to do. And that is what I do. The thing to understand is the food is about half of it. Absence of food is another 25% of it. And keeping fast, intermittent fasting is one big thing. In India, people eat dinner very late, which is a very bad habit. If they can just bring their dinner early to before sunset or before the sky becomes dark, there's a whole field called Circadian Rhythm. And 2017 Nobel Prize was given to that subject. Every cell in our body has a clock, and it operates on the basis of that clock. And that clock is tuned by the master clock in our hypothalamus. And our hypothalamus master clock is tuned by the blue light that hits our retina, our eyes. As we evolved, we used to sleep outside. In the last 150 years, since the light and electricity has come into play, we are messing up our lives by changing the rhythm and making our natural clock out of sync with the nature. And there's an Indian doctor, Sachin Panda, at University of California, San Diego. Okay, and his focus is on circadian rhythm, and he has demonstrated in a huge study with over 10,000 participants that if they just brought their dinner to the daylight time and they stopped going to gym after dark, so there are 3-4 factors. You get up in the morning, look at the sky, so that those blue light is hitting your retina, which has melanopsin cells that give signal to your hypothalamus. You make that change, you make change of eating food early before sunset or before it is dark for sure. And then the third thing is don't go to gym and work out at night. People's half the problems went away within 6 months based on Sachin Panda's work. So I put the whole thing into what I call 5 pillars of health. And these 5 pillars of health are your food, which needs to be plant-based whole food. As simple as that, nothing else. Eat whatever you feel like, as much as you feel like, and whenever you feel like, as long as it is during the daylight time of your 10-hour, 8 to 10-hour eating window, and it is plant-based whole food. Looking for a solution in millets instead of wheat is flawed. The fellow who has eaten millet all his life will benefit by changing it to rice and wheat. And the fellow who has eaten wheat all his life, he will benefit by changing few meals into millet and quinoa and oatmeal, because diversity is important. You never know what you might be missing. Okay. The second factor is detoxification. And detoxification is very important. And one way of detoxification is by having autophagy that got Nobel Prize in 2016 to Dr. Yoshinori. When you deprive your body of protein, body recycles the spent protein in your body in every cell. It recycles dead cells, damaged cells, senescent cells, okay? So in India, we have a custom, it is called Ekadashi Fasting, that you fast for full day every 2 weeks. That does wonders. That's what Dr. Yoshinori recommends. Okay, so intermittent fasting is one way, Ekadashi fasting is second, and third, where Dr. Honzo got Nobel Prize in 2018, is the concept of immunity. When you fast for 10 days with one meal a day, like we do in India or Navratri, then your body develops immunity to serious diseases like cancer. And if you are suffering from cancer and undergoing chemotherapy or radiation or surgery or whatever, if you would fast for 5 days every month, a Navratri style fast, which is one meal a day in the afternoon, 4 or 5 o'clock, small meal of 500-600 calories with 5-6% protein, you would benefit tremendously. So these are the kind of things I discussed. The third pillar is the circadian rhythm. The fourth pillar is physical activity. I recommend people at least walk 10,000 steps a day, if not more. And then the fifth is your spiritual and emotional health. So all these five are the pillars of health. And when you follow them, the diseases just go away. And I assure you, and everybody listening, and there are many people who might have been in my program, that you would be off medication within a month, 2, or at the most 3, for all chronic diseases, not for congenital diseases, not for infectious diseases. Yes, you build immunity for infectious diseases also. So it is as simple as that, and that's what I do. I know I don't have enough time, but thank you for that opportunity. And I would love to create a group if there's interest for the plant-based food Association of India. We can create a dedicated group of those members. I will discuss that with you, Sanjay, and we can move forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure listening to you, Lalit. And for you, we would have one question we can take from the audience. Whoever raises the hand first gets the opportunity. We can have one question from the audience. You can unmute yourself and straight away shoot your question.
There's Sanjay from Tokyo who wants to ask a question.
Yes, sir. My question is, have you published anything about your program, like book or something? Because you have
No,
got so many Nobel Prize.
I have nothing published. I have an e-book that is attached to my Facebook group in 15 chapters, and everybody who attends my program, of course, gets a copy of it on their phone, because I cover all about 250 posts on a span of 60 days with additional 100 links to 5-6 minute YouTube videos. So that's my method of teaching. And you can go to a Facebook group called Make My Health. So there is a July Make My Health group, which will be the July session. And I have WhatsApp group. I'll give my phone number here. You can call and I'll send you the link. Everything is free.
And
My phone number is 925.
One of the reason I was asking, because we need that kind of knowledge in Japan too.
Yeah, and I have members from Japan. I have people from 46 countries who have joined my group. And I don't have a regional group in Japan. If you would take interest, we can create a regional group in Japan. But I do have groups in English-speaking places, Australia, New Zealand, and Dubai, Singapore, UK, and one in Switzerland and Toronto. So, no, you write to me on this phone number. I'll send you the link. We can expand this effort to Japan, definitely. So 925-284-2581. Just send me one line that please send me a link to the July group.
Thank you.
I'll do that.
Wonderful. And anybody who didn't get the number, please reach out to me. I will be able to connect you to Lalit. One more question we can have for Niklas. Niklas, you spoke earlier in the webinar, and Gop is, I can see Gop there. Gop, you would like to come in very briefly? We want one question for Niklas also.
Thank you, Sanjay ji. Very pleasure to join this group, and thanks to Mr. Lalit and all the input. Yes, I would like to connect if any groups are there. Thank you.
Okay, so since there is no question for you from the audience, Niklas, I would like to ask a question. Niklas, you are there, right? Can you unmute yourself, please? No, I can't see or hear you. Niklas, are you still there? Just in case you come back, it will be a pleasure to hear from you one more time. And now we are at the end of the conversation. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We will have a closing note by Medha Gupta. And what a wonderful collection of speakers and the conversation that we had. And thank you, all the speakers. Over to you, Medha.
Thank you, sir. I think it's a great morning. We are starting our yoga day on a wholesome speech on nutrition and what could be the way forwards. So I thank you all the speakers for participating here and all the wonderful attendees who could join this morning. And I would say that transitioning towards a plant-based food is actually a mindfulness approach because it talks about conscious health, living. Particularly talk about how we can cater to the environmental challenges, how we can cater to our food system. So there's a holistic approach which is involved with plant-based food. So within the conversation which we had today, I think many of us mentioned about Dr. Michael Greger, and I think he's the one who has actually transformed the outlook to plant-based food. He released a book called as How Not to Die, and he totally talked about how lifestyle disorders can be reversed by implementing plant-based nutrition, and how we can actually eliminate medicines, how we can actually reverse diabetes, some of the cancers, hypertension, a lot of things, very informative information. So plant-based foods, basically, actually, I would say that throughout the, actually Indians have always been on plant-based food, and it's already been existing in world in form of different formats. For example, Mediterranean diet is a good example to say that, or you talk about DASH diet, it is also predominantly talking about plant-based foods as well. So this is a very well-grounded with good kind of clinical research, good kind of evidence to talk about that how it can actually create a good health. So I would say that it was a very interesting conversation we had. We talked about that how our lifestyle can lead to some of the disorders like diabetes and obesities, leading to hypertension and other lifestyle related angles. And adding to that, I would say that we Indians are labeled as thin fat Indians also. So we are genetically prone to these kind of lifestyle disorders. And when coupled with our dietary choices, we're actually doing more harm. And over here today, Nikhil also mentioned about the whole system of gut. And it is very true that gut is represented as our second brain. And it's very important that gut health should be very robust. And there are not much evidence right now, but people are working into the domain trying to understand that how plant-based meat alternatives or any dairy alternatives is actually transitioning to what kind of changes it bringing to our gut microbiome. And there was a recent study, actually it was the first study I would say, which was published last year, and it was a pilot study, a clinical randomized controlled trial, which mentioned that when people have shifted to plant-based meat alternative, they saw that the gut microbiome was healthy. And actually most of the product had pea protein as a base. So it's a good evidence, and I think more research is required to see that how it is acting in terms of consumers' well-being as well. And I am very proud that we have people like Kavya and people like Prakarshi, who is actually not just creating novel food products, but also talking about that how nutrition can be more viable with using processing techniques, so that we are able to enrich the food, enrich the losses which is happening due to the processing. So I think what's a wonderful session done by all the speakers, and we look forward that as we go again, we have more research and more kind of data, basically to talk about that what is the consumption behavior. Because I think Vishwas from FSSAI mentioned about a study which was done on 2012 depicting about the consumer and the consumption behavior. I think we need more recent evidences about it, because our guidelines, our recommendations have slightly been revised. So we need more information to know that what is the current status of people here. And with this whole holistic information, I think the plant-based food industry will also move forward in creating a sustainable approach, a healthy approach, and a human approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with this, we call the webinar to a close. You may exit now. And thank you once again. We will be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The recording can be stopped now.